Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Issues and Updates for October 24, 2023. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Commissioner Schrader is on her way. Chair, would you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Water Environment Services Board.
Is a request for consent agenda for Water Environment Services. Item 1, approval of an amendment to a contract with Michaels Trenchless for Phase 2 design and construction for the Tri-City Water Resource Recovery Facility outfall project. Amendment value is $58,444,000. Sorry, total contract value is increased to $60,602,083.60. Funding through Water Environment Services Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund. No county general funds are involved. Greg Geist, Director, Water Environment Services. Jeff Stallard, Capital Manager. Is that right? Great. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. Yes, you heard that right, $58 million, or $60 million in total. This project is our outfall project. We're building another 7.5-foot diameter pipe from our facility in Oregon City out to the Willamette River. It's been in front of you a few times. We just finished up Phase 1, which is really the investigation, geotechnical work, and design up to 60%, as well as the guaranteed maximum price. So this is a progressive design build project. And now we're seeking to enter the exciting part, Phase 2, which is final design and construction with Michaels. We expect to be done with construction in 2025.
Okay. Questions or comments?
I have one.
Commissioner Scholl.
Mr. Geist, this is an expensive project. I understand it's a difficult one. They're going to be doing tunneling for a large pipe. My question is on the design build markup of $7,661,879. Is that common in a project like this? The reason I bring it up is that it strikes me as being a high percentage of the overall project.
I'll let Jeff answer that. There is a kind of an industry norm.
Sure. I can speak to the markup. So typical when we would do a design bid build, we would never see what those numbers are, right? You get a lump sum value, so you don't get a look behind the curtain to see what those markups are. In this delivery method, this progressive design build, it's a negotiation. And so we were presented with numbers and we had a negotiated session, multiple sessions, 2 months worth of negotiations with them to land on that. Based on our owner's advisor in this tunneling industry, the markups are significantly higher. There's a significantly higher risk involved in this type of work, so we do. Included in that markup is not just overhead and profit. What you're seeing there is the total markups, which is general conditions, it's insurance bonds, it's things that we would call as indirect costs. It's the healthcare, the vacation, all of that goes into all their workers. And so you're getting not just the overhead and profit piece, but you're getting the total dollar there.
And is this contract amount based on the best or lowest cost, or is this because this particular contractor is highly specific in the kind of work it does, and there's not a lot of people out there to bid against them? Is that correct?
Both of those are true. For the non-self-performed work, which would be the part of the project that's not tunneling, that would be the marine component piece where we're building the diffusers out to the river, and the open cut piece where we're building traditional open cut methods. That was we received quotes and had discussions on those to pick the best value, but the tunneling piece was a negotiated price.
Okay, and I trust that if you two are comfortable with the amount of this contract, I'm okay with it too.
Any other comments?
Yes, sure.
Commissioner
So
Savas?
I two questions, one of which I forgot. We're going from what size to what size?
The existing outfall is a 72-inch, and we are putting in an additional outfall, which is this one will be 90-inch diameter.
Okay, and is this a maximum price, or is there a rock clause in there?
So this is a guaranteed maximum price, assuming there is some clarity around the geotechnical baseline report. So we've drilled a number of holes in the ground to try to identify what would be considered expected ground conditions based on the information we have. And so if we hit something I'll give for instance, a buried car next to the river. That was nothing that anybody could foresee. Then there would be a changed condition because it's not something that people would have expected to encounter at that time. But we've tried to quantify and clarify what the expected conditions could be, and this would be a maximum price based on that report that's included as part of the
So
contract.
What expectation is there for the rock, for the geo?
It is 36 inches in diameter, so if we hit a rock that's bigger than 36 inches and it has a material impact on their production, then we could have some conversations. Trees would be the other one, timber adjacent to the river. You wouldn't think of timber as being a big deal, but that fibrous material can impact their ability to clean the cutting fluids that are used. That could have a material impact. And there was, this again was when we have the contractor on board with us, we negotiated what those kind of terms would be, what we expected to encounter, versus trying to quantify it and put it out to bid separately, so.
Okay, so, I mean, I'll just ask a question differently. Is the geo analysis more that it's not hard rock, not size of rocks, but just hard rock base, or is it more river rock?
Both. We'll actually be drilling through the shallower portion of the drilling will be through more sandy material.
Okay.
And then as we get closer to the river, we do a vertical curve down into the more rocky material. And more information than you probably want, but to mitigate some of that risk, we put in soil improvements so that we can actually redo the cutting head of the rig underground before we dive into the harder material. That was one of the risk mitigation strategies we applied here.
Yeah, I just don't want to be in a position where we're at to prove an additional amount for unforeseen circumstances besides a car.
Right. Agreed. And the nice part or the worst part about geotech is we drill small holes and quantify a number of them along there. ODOT has a number of holes, so we feel pretty solid on we feel pretty confident on our geotechnical baseline report, which sets those expectations.
Well, the whole Gladstone thing has the stone thing and the rock and the nature of that area is pretty, it's real.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 2, approval of a contract with Michaels Trenchless for the collection system rehabilitation project. Total value is $1,174,349 for 8 months. Funding through Water Environment Services Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund. No county general funds are involved.
Thanks again, Gary. Yeah, this is a program, we own and operate over 350 miles of pipes and 9,000 manholes in our collection system. We TV and inspect about 50 miles of those pipes per year, and then prioritize projects that need, or areas that need to be rehabilitated. This project will do 6,000 plus linear feet and 4 manhole replacements. It was put out to bid, and this was the lowest responsive bidder.
Questions or comments, Commissioner West?
These presentations are great because it's always a learning opportunity for me, since this is something that I'm not obviously an expert in. But my question is are these the pipes that go directly from the plant to the business or the home, and do they vary in different size and scope? And so when we look at doing a project like this, do we take that into consideration? And can you give me an idea, like what kind of pipes we're working with here?
Sure, and this is not the pipes, what we call laterals that go from a business to, say, out to the street.
Okay.
We've got 6,800 feet of 8-inch, 1,900 feet of 10-inch, 890 feet of 12-inch, and 350 feet of 30-inch.
In this proposal?
In this proposal, yes. So it's a mishmash.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this normal maintenance?
It's it's called CIPP, cured in place pipe. And it's basically like putting a baggie through a cracked pipe and then sending either
So a
hot
stent,
air.
we're putting a stent in there.
Exactly, yes.
Okay,
And then
that's
it
my
cures
language,
and-
there
it
we are.
cures. Yeah, plastic pipe.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 3, approval of a resolution declaring the public necessity and purpose for acquisition of easements and fee property and authorizing good faith negotiations and condemnation actions for the Tri-City Water Resource Recovery Facility Outfall Project. Total value is $121,100. Funding through Water Environment Services Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund. No county general funds are involved.
So in the planning for our outfall project, there are 2 properties that we identified that we're going to need to, or that we may impact, and we need to get an easement on them.
Can you speak right in? Thank
Yes.
you, Greg.
There's 2 properties on the way from our property to the Willamette River that we think we're going to have an impact on, and we'll need to get an easement. They're near Old Agnes Road and Main Street, the new apartment complex behind the mini mall down there, as well as piece of property that has some storage on it, industrial use. So would like to get permission to proceed with those.
How often do you do agreements like this?
Very, very rarely. I don't think I've
And
ever
why
done
is it before us today?
one. Because we need to proceed with the project.
Have you tried negotiations?
No, we have gotten,
But why are you going, see, this is like
We need-
condemnation, and you haven't even negotiated yet.
no, we need your permission to proceed with negotiation on, we have gotten
Well,
appraisals.
I'm reading the words here, Greg.
Okay,
It says condemnation if necessary, is which
Right.
I don't like.
right, but if we go through the condemnation, we're really seeking authorization to do good faith negotiations.
And
If it goes to
condemnation.
condemnation, that would come through county council back to the board, absolutely.
So if you wanted, Commissioners, we could strike the condemnation portion of this and then come back to you if indeed that's what needs to happen.
When was the last time that this was, agreement like this was approved by the board?
I've not done one in my,
You don't remember?
In DTD, actually frequently.
Okay, but not through this agency, okay?
correct.
Okay. Paul, do you have your light on?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this is not uncommon, and if it does result in an effort for condemnation, that does come to us in executive session. Should that be the case, then we can make the call whether or not we want to do it. So this is ordinary to some degree, so I'm okay with it, and I know it has those words in it, but it takes a lot more further action, and we're involved in those next steps if it comes to that point.
Commissioner West?
I think that it's great that the chair pointed out that word because it has a lot of different connotations to it. And, you know, we're not involved in this process to the day like you guys are. Can you explain to me, like, in reality, what that means and how that would work? Words have meanings, but I don't know quite what it means here. And I hope you can explain that to me.
Commissioner West, do you mean the condemnation part?
Yeah, the condemnation piece, when and why, and how frequent is that? And, and why does it apply here in this situation?
It's really, I've never done it before. I mean, Dan Johnson at DTD, it's a routine thing for them, and county council, I'm sure, can tell you about the process. But basically, it's good faith negotiation. We've determined that there's a public good that would trigger eminent domain if we need to use it. And whatever the condemnation process would be, is same for DTD, and it would go through county council and to the board.
Greg,
I don't know much beyond that.
who's being condemned?
Nobody at this point.
Nobody. So like, I can see our friend down back there. Like, I obviously have a misunderstanding of what we're dealing with here. I don't know, maybe it would, just a little education would be good.
There's an attorney in the room and there's another director who both experienced this. Please come forward. Amanda and Dan.
Although, is Amanda with DTD or West?
County Council Office.
I beg your pardon. Amanda, please come forward.
Do you want me to sit up here?
I don't care where you sit, wherever's comfortable. Go ahead, Amanda.
So, as Greg described, by statute, the board is required to adopt a resolution that, of necessity, that's before you to basically authorize the department to enter into these negotiations in the first place. So it's kind of because the department is saying that this is an essential need, and if we can't reach a negotiated price with the property owner, then that is an option that needs to be looked at because this infrastructure needs to be put in. This lays the groundwork for that process. And as Commissioner Savas said, the condemnation process would come back before you in executive session. We have a separate attorney in our office who actually handles condemnation. But this is a routine process that, kind of procedure to initiate this process. So it doesn't mean that we are moving to condemnation. It basically just lays that groundwork, and it's kind of like notice, extreme notice, because that is an extreme step to take. So that's kind of the basics for this, and Dan, you
I
can.
just want to welcome Water Environment Services to the lovely world of condemnation. Dan Johnson, Director, Department of Transportation Development. You have approved a number of these, and essentially they're a necessity in front of any public project, as it was so eloquently said by Greg and council. It's just good faith negotiations. The frequency of condemnation, it depends on the project. And in all honesty, they aren't super frequent, but if we ever get to that, because our folks go out and do good faith negotiations to try to reach a reasonable price for whatever that acquisition might be. When these projects are developed, the good work from our engineering group, they try to miss things that are of significant impact to individuals and properties. So it isn't a common occurrence, but it's sometimes we do have to take that step. We inform you in executive session about that.
Okay, there's a value on here of $121,000 for us to approve this resolution. Why is that dollar figure on there?
We did have appraisals done on the 2 parcels that we think we may impact.
Okay, so this is for the acquisition of the parcels.
Of the easement, yes.
What?
The easement,
The easements, excuse me.
yes.
Mr. Savas, are you done?
Yeah, I have one question, and I apologize. Just want to go back to the last one, the one before this, for the trenchless work for the,
Okay, we can go back to that.
Yep.
Should we go ahead and finish this one first?
yeah, that's fine.
Any other questions or comments on this? Seeing no objections. Commissioner Savas, would you like to go back to that?
Yeah. So is, on number 2, for the collection system rehab, is that solely for Fisher Forest Park?
Oh, no, this is throughout our collection system. I don't know the exact locations, but like I said, it's everything from 8-inch pipe up to 30-inch pipe. It's where we identified, when we look at that 50 miles a year in our collection system down here, we prioritize the areas that need to be fixed, and these are the individual projects that.
I couldn't find, could you give me a breakdown of the costs for the Fisher, anything related to Fisher Forest? Because we just approved that whole system, for a lot of money.
Right. And that's a completely separate,
Right, so can you just itemize how much of that 1.1 million is Fisher Forest Park?
0.
It's got the Fisher Forest Park mentioned in here, in the packet.
Please come forward. Thank you very much.
If it has Fisher Forest Park mentioned in there, then that's a mistake on putting together the packet. There's no work in this packages for Fisher Forest Park. Last year, we replaced the entire collection system at Fisher Forest Park, so there's no lining work required there or repair work at this point. So
We did work a year ago, for this type of work there?
not CIPP lining, we actually dug and replaced pipes there at Fisher Forest Park.
Oh, can you, okay, if you give me some more information on what we did spend there, because if that's in addition to what we just approved, that's, again, I have concerns about that, just the equity issues with the rest of the district versus this particular one. If there's a relationship to this, and then also what you just mentioned, I would love to see the price tags of what was spent thus far on Fisher Forest Park lines.
So, okay, that's good. I think maybe we should pause on this, because if Fisher Forest Park is mentioned in this and you're not doing work on it, that correction needs to be made. And then would you bring it back with that correction and the answer to Commissioner Savas's questions?
Sure.
We're not on a timeline on this, are we?
No, there's no, it doesn't need to be
Why don't we
through this
just do
week.
that and give us more information on that?
Okay.
Thank
Happy
you
to do
very
that.
much.
All right, so we're pulling item 2, and we'll bring that back next week.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Chair, would you please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District?
I will recess as the Water Environment Services and convene as the North Clackamas Parks Recreation District.
This is request for consent agenda for the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Item 1, approval of a subrecipient agreement with Clackamas County for services to older adults and persons with disabilities at the Milwaukee Community Center. Agreement value is $430,458 for 1 year. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Human Services, Federal Transportation Administration, Ride Connection, TriMet, and the Oregon Department of Transportation. No county general funds are involved. Dominic Cortines is the Deputy Director of North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you, everyone, for, this is my first time before you, so I look forward to communicating with you, and let me know if you need anything else. So I just want to reiterate what Gary said. This is an important amount of money that helps us provide services for older adults at our Milwaukee Community Center. This is a continued agreement, almost a renewal. If you break it down, it really does some great things impacting not only home energy, medical assistance, transportation, and it just helps us provide the incredible services that we do there. So we're just looking to kind of renew this and get this on your consent agenda for the next go-around.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, so the funds for this are derived from the NCPRD-based tax rate?
No, this is an agreement with H3S. I think it comes from the Older American Acts funds these services along with, I think they're coming up with about $362,000 through a grant, and then there's smaller funding, $10,000 Federal Transportation Administration Fund. The Medical Assistance Program is a 21-25 agreement grant. And there's a few other grants that altogether equal this overall amount of $430,000.
You know, I've always struggled to understand, I never had a clean understanding of how is it passed through and why the Parks District is, I understand the seniors, the Milwaukee Center, right? But I always struggled to understand what our role was there, how much staff time is a portion of that, and if it is, you know, or is it managed by H3S or whatnot? So I maybe in a future date, I'm okay with this, but at a future date, maybe a better understanding of how that all works.
No problem. I'll work on that and then either just email it to you or bring it back before you, so whatever you prefer.
Thank you. Commissioner West?
My question was along those same lines, but to dive into one specific thing. You talked, it looks like a lot of these fundings actually come from transportation organizations of some type, TriMet and Federal Transportation Administration and so on. So I'm curious, what type of transportation services? Is it services that help people get to the grocery store? Are we helping people get to medical appointments? Are we just helping them get to a community center? What exactly, I'm curious in the transportation
You have an
role.
assist. Phone a friend. Go ahead, Rod.
Thank you.
Rod Cook, H3S. These are the same funds we get from our state, federal transportation funds that we fund all of our senior centers with.
Okay.
We just happen to be contracting directly with North Clackamas Parks and Recs on this particular site.
Okay, great. Seeing no further objections? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair, would you please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will recess as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and reconvene as a Board of County Commissioners.
Next is request for consent agenda for regular county business. First, disaster management. Item 1, approval to apply for a grant with the U.S. Department of Agriculture for wildfire evacuation zone preparedness activities. Grant value is $400,000 over 5 years. Funding through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. No county general funds are involved. Daniel Nybauer, Director of Disaster Management. Go ahead.
Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Smith, seeking approval to apply for the Community Wildfire Defense Grant. This would be a continuation of the evacuation work we've doing. We've labeled some draft evacuation zones. Our current phase is to do some partner engagement of that, and this would allow us to continue that work into a community engagement and education phase of this work. We would look to fund a limited-term staff position that would come in to develop and implement a public education campaign to spread awareness of the newly created evacuation zones, routes, and maps. And this project is in alignment with the risk and mitigation goals identified in the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which was last updated in 2018 and is currently under revision and will be updated by around the beginning of next year.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Next, Juvenile Department, item 1, approval for an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Youth Authority for individualized services. Agreement value is $76,558 for 2 years, funding through the Oregon Youth Authority. No county general funds are involved. Christina McMahon, Director of the Juvenile Department. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. Christina McMahon, Juvenile Department Director. And I'm here to request that the intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Youth Authority to continue our receipt of individualized service dollar funding through the Oregon Youth Authority be on your consent agenda for this Thursday. We use this money to fill the gaps where we can't access other forms of funding to make sure that we're fully serving youth that are involved in our department. So the purpose of this money is really to avoid having young people end up being committed to the Oregon Youth Authority and sent away from our county and set up for a different type of life. We're trying to avoid that here in Clackamas. So I would ask that you approve this to be on the consent agenda. It provides almost $77,000 biennium to help serve our young people.
Okay. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval to accept the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant for Skills Groups and Intervention Services. Grant value is $55,983 over 4 years. No county general funds are involved.
I would ask that you approve us, the Juvenile Department, in being able to accept this grant award. We've already gone through the process of applying. It's a formula grant. We've been awarded the money. All we need to do now is accept it. It will be used to pay for our contracted provider who does different types of skills and competency groups with the young people that are involved with our department.
Where does this type of work take place?
The groups themselves. Typically, in one of our juvenile department, we have several different buildings that make up the juvenile department, and these groups are done in one of our buildings.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing no objections. Thank you.
Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of a funding agreement with the Clackamas County Historical Society to provide educational programs, preservation of cultural artifacts, heritage, and historical archives, and to maintain and manage the facility and venue. Agreement value is $100,000 for 9 months. Funding through county lottery dollars. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair Smith. Commissioners, this is not the first you've heard of this. Essentially, back on August 2nd, 2023, the Board of County Commissioners directed this funding for MOOT and the Museum of Oregon Territories. Essentially, the agreement before you just formalizes that agreement and transfer those funds. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments?
The only thing, I'm fine with this today. I'd just love to get maybe a 5-year running history of awards to the Clackamas County Historic Society for this particular building.
I asked that same question, and in preparation for that question may come forward. I believe we'll take a deeper dive in it. Essentially, I think last year was the first time that we awarded funding through lottery dollars, but we'll take a deeper dive in the 5-year history of that.
Because it does specifically mention maintenance of the facility and so forth, and I maintain that's more of an asset investment than it is a service type of investment. So, but I'm okay with the expenditure.
Commissioner Schrader.
Do we know how often they are open, and have we quantified their services to the public?
Yeah, in the staff report, you'll see that, that was a question that came forward. Essentially, there was a question on the hours of operation. Their hours of operation are Wednesday through Saturday, 10:30 to 4 p.m. They did inform us that they're looking in the process of hiring 3 new employees to add to their team, essentially making it a total of 6. One of those is essentially an administrative assistant who will be their marketing specialist and an educator. And then basically one individual who's going to look for grants and other funding sources to help facilitate the good work of the museum.
Do they have an executive director? Do we know?
Yes, they do.
They do?
I believe they do.
Okay.
Don't ask me a name, but we can get that back to you if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Questions or comments?
Oops, sorry.
Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 2, approval of an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon to extend the fire hardening grant program through December 31st, 2025. Agreement value remains at $162,000. Funding through the State of Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
Like the prior topic, you have heard about this program previously and have supported it. Essentially, it is a fire hardening grant that's funded through the state, that's facilitated through our Building Services Department. There was one amendment. The previous amendment was basically back in last year, June of '23. Pardon me. Yeah, it was June of '23, which essentially was an amendment to extend the program to December 31st of 2023. This amendment essentially does a couple different things, but fundamentally it extends the program through 2025 and also adds some additional qualifications if there was potentially a fire that occurred in 2021. And then it basically makes it retroactive back to July 1st of 2023. So basically it extends the program that we currently are doing right now and the funding associated with it.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Next, Health, Housing, Human Services, item 1, approval of an intergovernmental expense agreement with Multnomah County Integrated Clinical Services to expand tobacco cessation services. The agreement value is $20,000 for 20 months. Funding is through Health Share of Oregon. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead.
Morning, Commissioners. This agreement compensates Multnomah County Integrated Clinical Services for training and resources to implement cessation services and implement a closed-loop e-referral in the Tri-County region.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with the State of Oregon for the purchase of additional software module from First Watch. Agreement value is $10,075 for 2 years. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, Clackamas County is utilizing the First Watch surveillance tool to collect and monitor opioid overdoses, provide follow-up to survivors, and connect them with resources. The data shared will include overdose dates, location, outcome, and medication type only.
Commissioner West.
Is this, this looks like kind of an EMS type system for electronic medical reporting system. Does this system speak easily to other systems within the healthcare, like with Kaiser, with OHSU, with Providence? Does it speak to Epic? Do healthcare providers and therapists have easy access to understand the information within this system so that we're easily speaking to one another?
It's a long question. I believe so, but I'd rather get the experts to give you specifics on where the data is going back and forth, because this is really has more to do with the drug trafficking and is capturing all the data points and hotspots in the county, and then feeding that back to the providers. And so that's where I think you would get medical, EMT, nonprofits, all of those having access to this information as it's collected.
And so is this like more of a public safety, like drug trafficking a piece, or we're dealing with treatment here?
This, for me, this is, how can I say, this is establishing the data. You could use it either way.
Okay.
So it's an inner connection of the two. So when you're doing drug prevention, it's going to give us the data. We need to know where the hotspots are. So judicial would use it one way, and the medical would use it another.
I just think it's come up more than once. I think it came up in our summit, is our ability for our information sharing within the healthcare space is really a problem that we have to do better in to get a grapple on this. And so I'm curious how this plays within that overall issue that we've identified. Are we just kicking the can on an issue like this is the system we have, or do we need to be looking at better EMS systems that will allow us to provide better care and treatment and to better communicate with providers? So that's my overarching concern here.
Yeah, I like that. I think this is a good start, because there's 900 projects throughout the United States that are utilizing this to get at that real classified data. to inform all the service providers you just talked about. So I think, again, we should continue to use this as a base, but still push for the other so that the two are talking.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of a subrecipient agreement with North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District for services to older adults and persons with disabilities at the Milwaukee Community Center. Agreement value is $430,458 for 1 year. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Human Services, Federal Transportation Administration, Ride Connection, TriMet, and the Oregon Department of Transportation. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, so this is the same contract that the funding side of the contract you heard from Parks and Recs earlier.
Yes, we just discussed that. Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 4, approval of an amendment updating the scope and increasing funding to an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Sandy for transportation services to support rural, elderly, and disabled individuals. The agreement value is $116,000 for 8 months. Total agreement value increased to $413,048 for 15 months. Funding is through the State of Oregon and $55,000 in budgeted county general funds.
Yes, this amendment does three basic things. Funding for fiscal year 23-24 for transportation, and the services would be to elderly and disabled. In addition to servicing Boring, the services will be expanded to include Estacada and Damascus outside the TriMet service area. And then it's going to eliminate the senior center contract and directly fund with the City of Sandy Transportation Department.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of a personal services contract with Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County for the formation and growth of an advisory group and lived experience council. Contract value is $367,306.50 for 1 year. Funding is through Supportive Housing Services Measure Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, overall, this is what the board approved at the policy session back in June 14th, 2023. But basically what it's doing, it's a pilot program that we're going to convene and staff a restructured homeless services advisory group and lived experience council to inform the county's efforts to end homelessness. This contract will implement the pilot program, allowing the county to evaluate the efficacy of contracting with an outside vendor. So basically, we're going to have these outsiders run this process for us. It will probably continue the work of I still call it the Blue Ribbon Committee, but that work, continue that effort of people coming together, convening, talking about issues and ways we can come together to end the homelessness piece. So.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so I think your last sentence or two maybe answers some of my questions, Rod. So this is advisory group to us?
Yes.
Okay. And it just more than I thought.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. And you said pilot, so, is that going to continue on for?
We're going to check it out this year. We're going to run it for a year, the way we've structured it, and see if it's what you need, if it's answering our questions. And I think it's going to be bigger than just people meeting, but it's a pilot. So we're going to see if it's giving us and you everything you need to move this agenda forward.
And as far as who designed this model, I guess, is what I'm kind of getting at. I'm just trying to understand if it's being we're going to be paying $300 for advice to us, right? So it's going to be advisory to us. It just seems, again, it seems like a lot. I'm repeating myself. But more importantly, I'm just, tell me from a professional standpoint how that would inform us in a meaningful way.
It's basically going to be continuing to convene all the key stakeholders who you would want at the table, who are going to be, whether it be law enforcement, business, users of the system, all of the above would be convened together and continue to talk about what are the issues that like if fentanyl hit us, they'd have that conversation and bring all the fentanyl experts to the table. If it was another issue, if we're going to go into small housing, if we're going to open up another site, we're going to have our recovery center, in terms of how is that interchanging with all the other parts of the system. So it's going to be all of the above and whatever you may bring to the table, and maybe commissioners want to go and talk to that group, put issues forward or take issues from it. So it's that system we're setting up outside of our staff, or it being housed at H3S.
And the people involved would be local or regional or out of state?
I think all of the above. I think most of them are going to be local or at least regional. Can I say regional? Regionally involved. But if there's experts that need to come to the table, again, you may have a commissioner say, hey, let's talk to some folks from wherever, San Francisco, wherever, and we would bring those folks in and do that work.
Okay, so last question on this, and that is the people that'll be hired in this, that'll be local people?
Yeah, this is a local nonprofit, so my assumption would be yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, Mr. Cook, I was just looking over the HSCCC budget for this, and I don't really have a question. I'm just pondering this to see if we are going to get $367,000 of actual effect, positive effect on our housing issue. Okay. Are you convinced that this is going to be a good use of those dollars?
I'm convinced it's a good investment. I believe, and please don't quote me on this part, but the board has just approved the transition center here in Oregon City. I believe this entity is actually going to be housed there. So they're going to be getting firsthand sight and information and of the flow of who's coming into the system, what the system needs are going to be. So this is really just standing up a major entity that's going to be, I think, servicing us from the political side, from the programmatic side, from the functional side, operational side. I think what you're doing is you're standing up a system that's going to be able to inform us of what we're doing.
And I see in Exhibit A, scope of work, the scope of work is quite extensive. Who in H3S will be monitoring the progress on the scope of work?
It's through our housing services, SHS staffing, but it's through our housing division who would treat this contract like they do others, where there'll be quarterly reports that are due to us on the progress of the scope of work. And so our staff would be monitoring that contract.
I see. Thank you.
Commissioner West.
Adam, can you weigh in here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Commissioner West. Adam Brown, Deputy Director, Health, Housing, and Human Services. So I think, Commissioners, this is kind of an important advancement in our gathering community input and being held accountable for the investments that we make in our homeless services system through input from our stakeholders. And so if you rewind the clock to before the passage of the SHS measure, the only advisory body that we had to oversee our homeless services programming was the Continuum of Care Steering Committee. And that steering committee was comprised of a few stakeholders from our community-based organizations and a number of county staff, including division directors from Social Services Division, Behavioral Health Division. So with the passage of the SHS measure, more resources available. We've known that we actually need to zoom out. This is a lot bigger than just our COC-funded programs and services. And now we need to be looking at all of the resources that we have available and how can we deploy those resources strategically to achieve goals based on allowable uses, et cetera. But that steering committee was somewhat insular, right? It was heavily weighted with county employees, a few community stakeholders, and this framework gives some distance between county employees and the advisory structure. It creates a lived experience council, a community stakeholders group, and then kind of an executive committee. And so it's more meaningful than I think our advisory structure was in the past. And it turns out that it takes a lot of staff time to intentionally support stakeholder engagement. And so we think this is a really good use of resources to kind of outsource that responsibility. And in discussions with HSCCC about the scope of this contract, I've said, look, we want critical feedback. We want to give you program evaluation information. We want to give you information about how we've allocated resources, and we want critical assessment. How are we doing in any one investment? Do we need to tune the dials? What does inflow look like? What is the success of programs looking like? And this is just a level of evaluation and feedback that we haven't had historically, and I think it's an important part of our long-term goals to be as effective as we can with the resources that we have available. So, Commissioner Schultz, to your point, I think this is a really wise use of resources, and it's a pilot, right? So we can see how it works for a couple of years and then take it from there.
It's a 12-month contract.
Yeah, we've talked with them about, okay, we're going to enter into this contract for the first year. I think with a pilot exemption, we can have up to 2 years with that. So we're starting here, and we're going to take it one step at a time.
So I don't have it right in front of me. I was trying to find out while you were talking, but we can all go back and look at it. Often now when we are taking on these huge projects and we have these big goals and we're being very innovative and creative, I always kind of use the recovery-oriented system of care resolution as a little bit of a true north. Are we in alignment with that? You said some things that made me feel like we were in alignment with that, and I want to touch on that and see if this is intentional. A big piece of being in a recovery community or recovery-oriented system of care, you talked about stakeholders, where there are so many different facets within the community that have ownership within this situation we're dealing with. Businesses are stakeholders, people in recovery are stakeholders, those that haven't gotten into recovery are stakeholders, parents, families, schools, all of us, you have all these tethering pieces, these pieces that make up the community, and finding the stakeholders to engage in that, because we alone as Clackamas County are not coming close to solving this as one entity, right? And bringing in that kind of evidence-based, purposeful practice that aligns within what it means to get treatment and recovery and fill the gaps of care in the care continuum. Do you see this being a tool to do just that when you talk about stakeholders and engaging with all those different entities that have a little more skin in this game?
This is 100% intended to accommodate our ability to make those connections. We do not have the internal capacity to do that now. We also, so I spoke to the distance, the proximity between county staff and what might be, dissenting opinions or differences in approaches. We have found success in certain areas getting some distance there between those things and county staff, but yet incorporating that feedback into the decisions that we make, because it's important and we care about it. And I don't want this to be insular, right? And so this will give us the ability to reach those communities in a way that we really haven't been able to. I don't know if it's able to or whatever it is, right? And HSCCC has proven really adept at similar to the way Ant Farm makes connections with our rural communities, right?
Yeah.
HSCCC has been proven to be pretty adept at their relationship building with the business communities and others. So I think we benefit from that distance a little bit and leveraging kind of these independent relationships to get that feedback that we really want, because it's important to us, and I certainly want to make sure we have pathways for that.
Adam, one of the questions that popped up was modeling. Is this innovative and new to us, or are we modeling something like this after, as a need for this?
I can answer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
This is real similar to Lane County. Commissioner Schrader brought it up a year or two ago, and we've been working on expanding the current structure to this new one that we're going to try.
And can I ask a question then,
Yeah,
too?
go ahead, Commissioner
The
Schrader.
comment I wanted to make was, actually, Emily and I have been working on this for years. Because what we were finding was that, again, it was somewhat insular, and HUD money was being dispersed within this, within a group of advocacy groups and staff. The Lane County model is far more inclusive in terms of, and they call their group, where is it here? Poverty and Homelessness Board. So they have that board, and it includes stakeholders, nonprofit providers, business community, people who have been homeless, healthcare, government partners, community advocates. But one of the reasons Lane County is considered to be one of the best examples of how they're actually providing homelessness services is because of this model. And having, in particular, my feeling has been we need to have the champions from the business community also having a voice on this. So I think this is our way of contracting with a group that has been successful, that's been knowledgeable here, and giving them the money to really let's broaden the stakeholders, because we'll get better models that way. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't this going to allow us to funnel HUD dollars? Don't we have to, is this going to be the committee that is essential for us to get those dollars from housing and urban development, basically?
Yeah, so
Yes.
we, as a continuum of care, as the lead agency for the local continuum of care, we are required to have a COC steering committee, but we can plug that into this framework.
It feels a little bit like an extension of the last day of the summit, a little bit, like moving that forward and kind of growing on that.
Commissioners, if I could make a comment, I don't remember approving this. And I'm down on page 15, and there's a whole bunch of assumptions about who is going to be an executive director on this. I think that before we approve this, we need a broader conversation on the goals of this. I'd like to have a policy session before we approve this today. I really would, because did we discuss this exactly like this and I wasn't aware of it?
So what we brought you in the spend down plan was in one of our categories, we proposed funding of facilitation for an advisory structure framework.
Thank you for that, Adam, but we have not looked at what that is going to be like. Now, this is a really big deal, and I think it may take some more input from this board on what we're going to do with this particular item. I would like to do that. I'd feel more comfortable going ahead on that. I know it's a pilot program, all for it, but that's what I would like to do. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm okay with supporting it today, just put that out there.
I am.
But I do want to ask a question. Will this relieve some of your current staff, some time, energy from current staff?
Absolutely.
How about how much, roughly?
Well, it's both, it frees up current staff capacity and it adds capacity that we don't have today, right? So it's at least a half an FTE, probably one FTE of relief, and then, right, it's funding beyond that.
Right.
So-
I understand it better, and as long as we commit to taking the advice, right? If we're going to pay for advice, I think we ought to seriously make sure that we use the advice as best as possible. Doesn't mean that we're forced to, because it's advisory, but I'm okay with moving forward. I do know that time is of the essence, so.
Gary?
I'm sorry, Commissioners, I agree with Chair Smith. Consent agenda is for contract renewals. This is a significant policy shift. Granted, the board talked about it, but you're forming a full committee. I looked at the cost, you're hiring staff. This is a big deal. And so your recovery summit recommendations are next week. They're requesting forming an advisory group. Should that be combined with this? Is it the same group? There's so much going on here. I advise you to wait so we can come back to you and put this all together. Are you creating a new advisory board? That's a big deal. I mean, respectfully, there's a lot going on here that I don't think you have all the details
Well,
yet.
most advisory boards don't have the staff that this one does. So this
paid
is not
staff,
an
right.
advisory board.
Well-
Is this created, just a moment, is this created just for the Navigation Center?
It's not, and just for clarification, I think we still have flexibility as a county to determine exactly what the advisory framework looks like. This is purchasing the capacity of the HSCCC to facilitate those processes on behalf of the county. So we're not giving up our agency as a county to determine what the advisory framework looks like. It's sketched out here as contemplating, okay, here's the types of things we want to consider as a county, but really we're purchasing that facilitation and convening capacity from the HSCCC.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, looking at the chart on the full-time employees, is it correct that the Housing Solution Coalition of Clackamas County Incorporated will devote those full-time employees to this project specifically?
They're required to, because our funding is restricted, right? It's SHS funds, has to be used for programs and services that are working to end homelessness, and we're buying this capacity from them, yeah.
So we're buying that, and they're going to dedicate those 2 FTEs to this Clackamas County, and the 50% of a FTE for the executive director, that'll be focused 20 hours a week on this specific program.
That's correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Schrader.
I'm okay with it as it stands, but I have had some long-term familiarity with this. So Gary, we need a work session, right?
That's my recommendation, Commissioners. You make the
Okay.
decision.
Yeah, I think we need to have more input on exactly what this is doing, and I think we need more time to study it. We can get it set up. We have, like I say, Commissioners, we have 3 spots that were made available to us that we can plug this into.
I agree.
All right, Commissioner West.
Yeah, it sounds super promising, but I want to make sure that, I don't know what the timeline looks like for this, or if it's super strict. It doesn't sound like it is. We are very urgent on this issue, but I think there's a level of us being judicious and prepared that is warranted. I'm quite intrigued by what you presented.
Yeah, and Commissioners, I think this is a learning experience for me in terms of making sure that we've socialized these things. Like to Commissioner Schrader's point, the advisory framework restructure has been something that the board has wanted our department to do for a couple of years now,
Yeah.
but perhaps we didn't lay the groundwork that we needed to socialize the elements of what we're proposing here today,
Let's
so we're
take
happy
some
to
more
come
time
back.
to discuss it. I don't want to spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes discussing something this important. I think we need a little bit longer. We'll bring it back as soon as we get it scheduled. Gary, we'll put it on the Tony will make it a priority.
Yes, we'll pull this as a consent agenda and schedule a policy session in the next month.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
All right, back to the consent request. Item 6, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for the Oregon Tobacco Quit Line Electronic Referral System. Agreement value is $6,000 for 12 months. Funding is through Health Share of Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this system will facilitate the implementation of an electronic referral system that enables the bidirectional exchange of data between the healthcare professionals and the clinics, and send electronic referrals and outcomes back to the clinic.
Questions or comments?
I have one.
Commissioner Scholl.
Mr. Cook, will this have a impact on our high schools in terms of working with them to prevent tobacco use?
It should affect all our populations, but this is, basically creating, again, a informational system or software system that's going to be able to have one agency to be able to talk to another agency about tobacco use and cessation and training programs and those type of things. So the short answer is yes, it should affect all populations.
Okay.
Questions or comments? See no objections. Thank you.
Okay, next, County Administration. Item 1, approval to issue a social games license to the Oregon Poker Club. License value is $25. Funding through the Oregon Poker Club. No county general funds are involved. Tony Mayernick, clerk to the board, will explain this.
Chair Smith, Commissioners, you may or may not know this, the county regulates social gaming within the county's borders as allowed by Oregon statute. The Board of County Commissioners, way back in sometime in the 1970s, authorized this program, and the county code takes up a page and a quarter. It's a very straightforward application. The entities that can apply have to be a charitable, fraternal, religious organization of some kind. They need to fill out an application as specified by the board, pay the fee of $25 as specified by the board. We refer the applications to the sheriff's office, who complete an investigation to determine if there is any reason not to issue the license. Sheriff's Office findings is that while there are calls for service at the location, none could be identified as being related to the Oregon Poker Club, and so they see no reason not to issue the license. Having gone through that process, it is the board's determination whether or not you may issue a license.
Questions or comments?
So staff is recommending you issue the license. You've done this sporadically over the last 40 years.
Scholl?
Yeah, I think we should go ahead and issue the license. I got a pair of aces. What do you got,
Full
Chair
house.
Smith?
Full house, you think so?
Okay.
Not anymore. It's empty in here.
Seeing no objections, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the request for consent agenda. We are pulling H3S item 5 and Wes item 2. All the rest will be on this Thursday's business meeting agenda. Next, selection of a search firm for county council recruitment. Evelyn Minor-Lawrence, Director of Human Resources, and Jared Haddock, Recruitment Manager, will present. There was a memo in your packet. Go ahead, please.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. We are here to seeking your approval for an executive search firm to take the lead on the recruitment and selection of our next county council. And here with me, again, I have Jared Haddock, the recruitment manager, and he can provide you a high-level detail of why we selected the firm that we are recommending. Okay?
Thank you, Evelyn. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Smith. As you might recall, we came before this board last month in September to put forward an RFQ to solicit proposals from search firms. We had 12 firms that responded to our request and submitted, which was great. We had a team within HR that reviewed all requests, and what we were looking for was the firm's experience, staff experience, their work plan, their timelines, their guarantee, their approach that they'd be taking, and their cost. What we had found in examining all of those elements, that one firm really shined among the others, and that was Prothman. Some of you may be familiar with Prothman. Prothman is a search firm that specializes in government entities. They have done a lot of work within the Oregon as well as California, Washington, and other jurisdictions as well. And so based on that, and kind of what they're proposing, it's the staff's recommendation to go with Prothman as the firm that we will be working with to find our next county council position. And of course, this is just, we're asking approval, a recommendation and approval to select Prothman, and then once we go into contract, then the work really begins, and then we'll have input and so forth on that end.
Is this a local firm?
It's on the Pacific Northwest. It's in Washington. They're located. I'm sorry, Washington.
Issaquah.
I'm sorry.
Issaquah, Washington.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Because I was reading some of the allowed expenses and travel was mentioned in there, and that's defined. The dates are a little off, however, on this.
Yes.
What do you plan to do about that? The dates are not accurate in this contract that we're being asked to approve today.
Yes, absolutely. So the dates are just a suggestion. So that's something that we will be working with them and setting those dates. So we will have authority over that to say when we're going to do that.
So if we approve this contract today with inaccurate dates, that is okay?
So you're not approving the contract today. You're giving direction to staff to go forward with this contractor to do a contract. Staff is recommending Prothman as the company to do the work. If you agree, we're going to start the contract negotiations.
All right.
And once we establish the contract, then we'll work, the dates will be inserted in there.
And then do you have to come back here again? No, it's just approval and go.
It's just approval.
Just
You'll come back
go.
to consent agenda with the final contract, and then you'll meet with the firm to start the negotiations. I'll remind you, Mr. Madcore has agreed to stay until his replacement is hired. This clearly will not be done in January, when he initially gave his retirement. He'll stay until this is done.
Got it. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, it looks like Prothman's done a lot of work in recruiting for government, and I think we should probably go ahead and contract with them.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
moved.
Please.
Commissioner Savas has moved, we approve the Prothman Executive Recruitment Firm proposition today to head up our search for our lead county council, and Commissioner West has seconded that motion. Further discussion. Commissioner West?
Yeah, forgive me if I couldn't find this in the packet. I tried.
No, that's okay. It's lengthy.
Yes, I tried. So we have one brought before us who has a lot of government experience, and that's fine. But I also think there's benefit in a variety of outside experiences, just not government experience and perspectives. Or do we have any competitive local companies, Clackamas County companies that reside here that participated in this process? And did we look maybe for some innovation outside of government to help inform this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, we did have a local one in the proposal. If we didn't want to go with Prothman, we had two other firms, rising stars, if you will, and one of which was a local, and that's WBCP. It is a local within Clackamas County. One of the factors, given our budget constraints, we definitely and certainly took that into consideration. In looking at all of the proposals regarding cost, we were seeing two avenues with that. Many firms in executive, it's common to do a percentage based on the incumbent's final salary, what that may be. And so many of those firms do that. Some will do base a flat rate, which Prothman does. One of the reasons, not just because of their experience, but Prothman is the most competitive because of their price. Looking at what they offer, all of the search firms in general offer the same thing. They meet with their clients to develop it, they're finding someone. So you're getting the same for your money, but in some regards you are paying more with that. So again, that's one of the factors that we went with Prothman, looking at, absolutely, we have people in the community, but not just looking at experience, looking at also what is the cost we're getting for the product, and is that different than another organization's cost or proposal?
Is it a national search, or are they also going to be like understanding that Clackamas County is very local, right? So Clackamas County ways matter, and so how can we talk about the specifics on how they're going to be targeting?
That's a great question, and Chair Smith said that so eloquently last time we met in September. This will be a national search, and so they will have outreach. They will be doing it at a national level, and as we've seen from their experience, they've done national searches before, and so that's to get the caliber of candidates. We have to look outside of our backyard to be able to get that breadth and experience that we're really looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have a motion on the table. Tony, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Evelyn, and for coming forward. Derek. I almost said Derek, and I thought it was the wrong name. Yes, thank you. Very good work.
Thank you.
All right, we'll skip ahead. Advisory Board and Commissions. Tony, go ahead, please.
Clackamas Workforce Partnership currently has 4 openings on their board due to member retirement and resignations. 25 members are allowed with 3-year terms. Through a recruitment process, 2 applications were received and 2 are recommended for appointment. Recommendations are Greg Lewis and Cindy Wolf to first terms.
I move approval.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved the approval of Greg Lewis and Cindy Wolf to the Clackamas Workforce Partnership, and Commissioner Savas has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner West.
I need a second. I had a question. Let's see. I had it in front of me. I apologize.
Okay.
Names again really quick.
Greg Lewis, Cindy Wolf.
No.
Okay.
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. What's next?
Next up is the ABCs for the Community Action Board, staffed through Health, Housing, Human Services. Currently has 2 openings in their private sector allocation and 1 opening in their low-income allocation. Due to term expirations and resignations, 9 members are allowed with 3-year terms. Through a recruitment process, 2 applications were received. 1 is recommended for appointment. That is Leota Childress to a 1st term.
Questions or comments? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Commissioner West has moved, we approve Leota Childress for the Community Action Board, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Yes.
We don't always give a little props to people who apply, and I appreciate everybody who does apply and wants to serve our county and put their hat in the ring. Leota has been a treasure to this county and has really done a lot of labor of love for vulnerable populations, and so I think she'd be a fantastic addition, and I just wanted to publicly tell her thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comments? Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Shull,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next.
Last but not least, the Veterans Advisory Council currently has 9 openings on their commission due to resignations. 19 members are allowed with 2-year terms. Through a recruitment process, 3 applications were received and 2 are recommended for appointment. Recommendations are Tanya Legge and Thomas McAllarney.
Mackerel. That's all right.
You got it.
You got it. I'll entertain a motion.
I move for approval of the Veterans Advisory Council recommendations.
I'll second.
Commissioner Scholl has moved that we approve Tanya Legge and Thomas McIlharney to the Veterans Advisory Board. Thomas, I apologize for your name pronunciation. Any further discussion? Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Shull,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Next, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, October 26, 2023 at 10 a.m. You have all the consent agenda items you discussed today, except for the 2 you pulled, and your normal course of business. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know prior to Thursday, and my staff or I are happy to answer it for you. I don't see PGI in the room, so we'll pull the item on the CPO bylaws until next week. Next, Commissioner Savas had asked to discuss request for transportation funding options discussion.
Yeah, Chair made a request several times verbally, and I thought now that we're all here, try to get that on the agenda soon. Excuse me. I was just thinking about maybe a brief work session where maybe some of our staff can outline some past funding mechanisms have been explored, not to make any recommendations, but just put it on the table. Due to our recent action with regard to our opposition to the tolling, the common thing that is being discussed at OTC everywhere right now is funding, and what we do to either fund our I-205 project that's been canceled. I will be testifying and speaking to members of the OTC. Actually gave a tour to one of the members of the OTC. I think I'd like to represent the board's position on what we see as an alternative means to fund the I-205 project. So a board discussion soon would be appreciated.
Commissioner West.
I understand that. I think that's important. I want to make clear a couple things that I'm hearing. When the board took a policy position or was backed into it or felt like they were because ODOT decided to take the 3rd lane away, ODOT decided to push a tolling scheme, ODOT wouldn't let us have a voice at the table, ODOT said no to all 16 cities, ODOT continued to stonewall us, and the only option we have was to say, as a policy position, we also feel like that there was a necessity to support IP4 and let the voters choose whether or not they want this very expensive boondoggle on 205 without any infrastructure anyways. Like, we're not going to get the infrastructure, we don't get any of the diversion. So even ODOT says we have to use tolling to pay for the infrastructure, we're still getting none of it and still paying for it. That's what was on the table even before we supported IP4. I'm hearing some confusion out there in the community that some are promoting, I believe, a mistruth that we said no to ODOT funding or some funding stream or funding source. I categorically want to make clear that that is not fact or true. And I want to make that statement very clear. We did make a bold policy position support IP4 that I feel like we could argue very clearly we were pushed into. However, the truth is we do have transportation needs in the future. So if not tolling, what and how, so we can get our infrastructure funded moving forward. Am I understanding the two different, they sound similar, but they're not the same, right, Commissioner Savas?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can't control what people might interpret from any actions in the rumor mill, and as you know, your latter point about if not this, then what, I think is the responsible piece I'm just trying to address. Just want to make sure, I constantly hear from people say, well, if you, and they might misinterpret even what I say, right? Or what the board's position is. When I say, geez, okay, we're against ODOT's tolling proposal, the instant response is, then what's the answer to fund it, right?
Right, it's true.
They have said, we're legislatively obligated to pursue tolling. And I say, well, actually, if you look at HB 2017, the key thing that was really the centerpiece of were the three projects.
Mm-hmm.
There was no legislative direction to cancel the I-205 project.
Yep.
That was a staff recommendation. So, something that's more of a subset or ancillary to the bill is now the huge topic they're pushing forward. So it is confusing, but I would say the confusion is not coming from us. I think the confusion is coming from the mixed messages from them. But nonetheless, we need to be the grown-ups in the room, and we need to at least identify what models we would support, or a discussion of whether or not we should just take the I-205 project off our list or a project. But I would argue this, is that the failing aspect of the bottleneck today is not our problem. It's not our responsibility. The failing aspects of the 205 bottleneck is a responsibility of ODOT. And that's why the legislation passed.
But ODOT took that away from us right before we voted in support of IP4.
Understood.
It was a priority in House Bill 2017. They ripped that rug out from Clackamas County residents and says you still get to pay for the metro improvements, but you still get nothing for it. That was ODOT doing that, and we had no voice. And so now we need to say, no, we still need that lane on 205. Now, how are we going to fund it? We got to get, our pencil sharpened. Am I understanding this?
Right. And I think they would argue that we canceled the project because, inflation and, tolling's not going to pay for enough of it or whatnot. Whatever they want, it doesn't matter what they say, right? But the fact of the matter is, I think we need to come up with a viable, something we would support, so I can convey that. Here are some possibilities of some items we would support. And we have a short section coming up, and I think it's wise for us to pursue that ask for funding 205. Okay, and the question will come up, well, how do you propose, right? Paying for it.
Fair enough, thank you.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, my question is for Commissioner Savas. I understand the need to look at this funding issue. This highway, of course, is a concern for Clackamas County and its residents, but it's also the main northwest freight line highway for commerce on the West Coast coming through our area. Your idea to look at alternative fundings, is this something that you want to do a initial concept with here at the county level and then take it to AOC, or how do you propose to proceed with that?
Yeah, let me just clarify. It's not my idea to search it out. It's been a question that's been posed to me several times as your representative on the transportation issue. So I'm just trying to garner your input. I'm not saying we're making a decision. Okay. But when you're at the table and the question is, okay, if not this, then what? What's your, what would you support? I think we need to identify that, right? We're in this together to a certain point, but at the same token is, I also want to have full faith and confidence that, you know, our partners will follow through with the project. And I thought, frankly, prior to them canceling it, that, you know, no one told us that the governor's pause would result in canceling our project. The governors, you know, the sine die, if they knew that they had a financial problem with funding the rest of the project, okay, for example, if inflation, they should have went to the legislature and said, you know what, we need a stopgap measure. We need to fund this, whatever it is, right? They didn't make that call, but we have a session in front of us. I think we have a responsibility to at least,
So do we do
I
a,
need to be able to answer the question.
okay, so do we do a work session to scrub through all the possible potential sources of funding?
Well, to me, it's more of at least a short term. If it's simply the I-205 project and what's on, we can't invent something, you know, and have it created by the legislative session. So practically, is it vehicle reg fees? Is it gas tax, right? An interim suggestion, because a long-term solution is something that we can't put together in a short time. We can't do that, but we could have those discussions for the short-term problem and maybe a discussion, if you wish, on the long-term.
And the last question is, the short session begins in February, so we have like 4 months.
Yeah, and some would argue it's already started.
It's already started, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Ledge Days is around the
Okay,
corner.
thank you.
Yeah.
The vote on IP4 is a referral to the people to ask them if they want to vote on tolls. That has not happened yet, so therefore there is no replacement revenue because there was no revenue to begin with to be replaced. And I will maintain it is not the job, purview, or even jurisdiction of the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners to recommend ODOT how you're going to fund our roads. Talking about the state highways or the interstates. It is up to the purview of ODOT and the Oregon legislature. I will not be in a position, I will fight it tooth and nail if this board decides they want to go with a large tax increase, as I have heard levied out there, proffered out there, of the gas tax. I had discussion with a very large community group last week. They were appalled they were even thinking about that, said, we are paying. And commissioners, how is it other jurisdictions get their project paid for, like the very extensive projects on Highway 213 and 217 in Washington County and other aspects of across the state. So I'm not exactly keen on moving this forward because I don't want to be in a position of thinking that we support increased fees, increased taxes. This tolling scheme has the potential to be the largest single fee increase in the history of the state of Oregon. And for us to think that we're going to backfill that amount of money with a different scheme from this Board of County Commissioners, I think we need to walk gingerly through this. I am not wanting to really pursue this very much because it's going to be totally misunderstood and misconstrued what we're trying to do. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, Chair, I appreciate your concerns. No one wants to raise the fees. Again, I'm just trying to be practical, be able to answer the question. As I mentioned to you in your office here a few months ago, I foresaw this, and I mentioned to you that there is confusion by some legislators who thought that our action that we took in whatever, May 10th or whatever it was, when we supported HB 3065, which became HB 3055, they interpreted that as supporting tolling and for the funding of I-205, because that's specifically what the packet said. That's exactly what we discussed. So some will argue that we reneged on that, so to speak, by our action, but I don't disagree that putting it to a vote of the people is not necessarily saying no to the funding, but it certainly delays any kind of bonding aspects or bonding ability to, you know, to bond for the project. So it seems, therefore, that if we're now saying no because of the way now their project looks like, you know, we didn't know back then in May of 2021 what the project looked like we do today. We have certainly lost faith in their proposal. So it's easy to say, geez, now we got more information, we don't like what we see, so therefore we have a perfect right to have a different viewpoint. I've been very outspoken, and you've heard me say, I do not support ODOT's current tolling proposal, and that is true to this moment. So I will reiterate that. However, when we say that, we have a responsibility to at least, I think, at least a moral responsibility to say, you know, we need to fund this project. Here's some interim solutions to fund it.
Well, we disagree philosophically on that, Commissioner Savas, what our responsibilities are on this. Commissioner West and then Commissioner Scholl.
I mean, just reflecting back this year, we have had some discussions about different innovative funding sources that, of course, have been ignored because it wasn't ODOT's idea or Rep. McLean's idea, I guess. We talked about potentially modernizing and utilizing a net neutral source to help fund some of these projects through the DEQ model idea that we talked about. And we've talked I think former Senator Betsy Johnson has been very smart in her saying, hey, we're talking about a behemoth of an organization with record revenues that's never been held accountable, and God forbid the Secretary of State decided to audit them, we might find a nice chunk of money within their organization to help fund specific projects. Maybe it is understanding what a vehicle miles tax might look like. Maybe we focus it on hybrid and green cars because they've never paid their fair share for using this road, the roads and the infrastructure. Maybe I think there's so many ideas potentially if you get into a think tank room that don't involve like gouging the everyday man and woman in Clackamas County and small businesses that continue to be just not talked about, or just like, oh, that can never work. And instead of just sharpening pencils and looking at creative ideas. And I think sometimes it's not our job, like Chair Smith said, to have all the solutions on how to fund this, but we should have some ideas, and then you're credible at the table. Now, whether or not everybody agrees with your idea is almost irrelevant at this point. But saying we have nothing isn't good, but saying maybe it's the DEQ, maybe it's an audit of ODOT, which I think would be popular with the public because it's already it's popular with me, I'll tell you that much. And maybe it's understanding more what a vehicle miles tax looks like. It's something to say we do have some ideas and they're worth talking about, and you won't even let us talk about our ideas, I think is a smart approach.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, without getting into a lot of detail on this, Commissioner Savas's idea, I think, could end in something very constructive, and that is priming the pump of the Clackamas Caucus with ideas on potential funding. So when they go to Salem in February, they're already thinking about this. The problem, so often, you've been in Salem, is that you bring the legislators together and they go through this big gaggle of discussion and thought, and I think that if we could prime at least the Clackamas Caucus's thinking about potential ideas for solving this funding issue, we might find that the short session might be more productive in our favor.
Well, for an interim solution, so there is the short and the long, and VMT would be a long-term solution because there's no way of implementing that today, tomorrow, next year. So and if they want a bond to build the project. But again, I guess I won't say we're in an untenable position. We're in this awkward position where it's still one of our top priorities, the I-205 project. So if the project disappears from a high priority, I'm not suggesting that because we have some issues, then the need for that discussion dissipates, right? Yeah. It's not really necessary. However, I just want to go back to, Chair, you were in one of the AOC meetings where I made the proposal for us to get a long-term discussion for funding, and now the AOC and LOC are working on that collaboratively. So that's a different discussion, right, for VMT, for example. But any ideas we have would be appreciated.
Are you back in?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I just mentioned at least 3 great talking points. Here's the truth, is that the leaders in the legislature have been really clear. We're going to try to tackle Measure 110. Now, do I have a lot of confidence that they're actually going to successfully tackle a problem they helped create, meaningfully in a short session, and they only have, a month or something to do this? 45 days to do this in a short session, and it's quite contentious and politically hot. I don't see them tackling massive tolling issues and Measure 110 in a short session really in a meaningful way. This is really preparing, I think, for local conversations and going into the long session. I don't know if we're going to have a lot of opportunity in this short session unless I'm not understanding something.
Yeah, this is not a tolling discussion. It's like in lieu of.
In lieu of, yeah.
In lieu of, for this particular project, right? For this particular project, I think, you know, if they said it would take 2 cents to 2 cents increase in gas tax to fund the I-205 project, that is 28 times less, about approximately, or 25 times less cost to a household.
Well,
Right?
I hope they look at braided funds and personal budget accountability within the giant behemoth of ODOT. I mean, I think that's also valid.
Yeah, all I'm trying to ask, is there interest, is there two members of us to put this on the agenda for discussion? That's all I need. If not, then it'll die. I'm not making a motion per se. I'm just saying if there's not 2 votes to put it on the agenda, I think a reasonable conversation's in need.
Commissioner
Gary-
Salas, you have my support.
Gary, what is it going to take for staff to do this?
Staff has this data from a few years ago, so they can refresh it. They'll just present you the factual data of all your options. They're not taking a position. They're not making a recommendation. They'll just give you all the options for you to discuss. So we could pull that together.
Yeah, thank you for your support, Mark.
You're welcome.
Any other further questions? I remain steadfast on this. I don't see it's our responsibility to do this. We can have a discussion, but I'm telling you, Commissioners, this is where I'm going to throw down the gauntlet on this particular issue. We have taken a very hard stand on letting the voters tell us what they think on this, and for us to come back and seed what they're going to do on this, I think it's not really the proper way to do business.
That's not a proper characterization, Chair.
You know what? You characterized me as saying this and thinking that just because we voted on House Bill 3555, we gave the go-ahead on tolling. Commissioner Savas, I've let you get away with those statements, and I'm tired of you saying those statements as well that aren't true.
Just
So,
read the packet and watch the session.
you know, I read the packet. I was chair on that session. I know what happened. So likewise, I'm growing weary of these continued mischaracterizations on what this commission did back then. 2 votes, go ahead on this, but I'm just letting you know, Commissioners, I'm taking a very hard stand on this going forward. Any other business, Gary?
Last item is Commissioner Communications.
Okay, I have got to go to a luncheon, so I'm going to be, not have Commissioner Communication. Does anybody want to continue with this?
Other commissioners have anything to pass important today?
I do
Can we wait till
I
Thursday?
can wait till Thursday.
Okay.
Wait till Thursday.
I can wait till Thursday.
Thank you very much. Seeing no business before this commission, we are adjourned.
Yeah.